We live in a small neighborhood. All of the surrounding streets dead end into a half-circle park. Behind the park are some woods and a railroad track. When we were younger, we all played in the front part of the woods. We never ventured too far back. This was our first play area for years. Never had been an issue or scare. This area was a pretty and well-lit wooded area. Anyhow, one day my brother Jimmy, my best friend Sarah, and my brother's best friend Ian were all building a dam in the middle of the small creek that ran through the park and the woods. The boys decided they were going to head back to Ian's house for some snacks. Sarah and I said we were going to stay and finish our camp area. As we are moving rocks around, I get an odd feeling come over me. A strange feeling that we're being watched. I immediately think it's the boys trying to scare us and just continue with what we were doing. Sarah and I load up some big rocks and head back to the creek and put them on the dam. I get that feeling again, and as I stand up, I see someone straight in front of me about 30 feet away. I can't clearly make out what it is yet because it's behind a bush, and I do see a pattern of red and blue. I know that's nothing the boys had on, so at this point I'm trying to focus, trying to figure out what that thing was. As I'm scanning up the bush, I start to realize it's a clown. My heart started pounding immediately. The clown and my eyes lock. He is wearing a blue-red hat with a reverse patterned red-blue jumpsuit. I grab Sarah's shirt and immediately pull her up tight, and she notices the man right away. He's smiling with a full face of makeup and has a huge knife. We both say nothing and start running as fast as our legs can take us. He begins to follow. We can hear twigs snapping and ground crushing, but we're booking it. We run through the front of the woods and through the side of the park and up the dead-end street. Ian and Jimmy are 2 houses up from the dead end and see us running and are screaming what's going on. While running past, we scream a clown and they start laughing. We're still running, screaming for our lives, and finally make it to the middle of the street where Sarah's dad Danny's now running out of the front door because he hears us screaming. We meet Danny right at the beginning of the neighbor's house, and we're trying to explain what we saw, and he says, "Girls, stop it now. This is ridiculous. What are you talking about?" We try to catch our breath. By this time, Jimmy and Ian have caught up to us. We're crying and pointing and telling Danny again that we saw a clown with a knife. Jimmy and Ian are laughing, and Danny is asking if we're playing a prank on him. And around this time, an old yellow Pinto type of car comes from the dead end and pulls up right next to the sidewalk of the yard we're in. Sure enough, plain as day, it's the clown. No hat this time, but knife in his hand and telling us to come here. Danny starts shoving us all towards the house, and he himself is scared and running now. The car drives off down the street. We get inside and Danny calls the police. We had to give a statement, and police patrolled the neighborhood and the park for a few weeks. We were never allowed to go in the park again, and after a few months, the city started to clear out the woods, cut down many trees, and made a walking area you could see through all the way through the train tracks. My friend and I used to talk about this many times up until her death. Nobody would believe us had they not seen it as well. It's just so scary. I think they only got to see him because whoever it was had to go down the dead-end street to leave the neighborhood. Either way, this man was not afraid of us, nor the small group of people that gathered from our screaming. He very bravely stopped right in front of us as our father tried to comfort us and calm us down, all while flashing his knife. We're lucky to be alive, I feel. Had it just been one of us left in the woods, which sometimes occurred, I don't think there would have been a group of 4 of us anymore. Sarah's dad stopped drinking that day. We all have a fear of clowns. I work as an assistant manager at a movie theater. This isn't a big chain theater like Cinemark or Regal. It's a family-owned company that has only 6 locations. A friend of mine who also works at the theater, Kath, works as a floor employee selling tickets, picking up trash during the day, working the concession stands, etc. Another position available at our theater is a cleaner. These are workers who come in around 7 a.m. and clean the theater before we open, so that everything is nice and tidy before the moviegoers rush to the box office. Floor employees who want to get some extra hours can opt to come in and work as cleaners as well. Kath briefly took up this position for a couple months, and when she was short on money and needed to make a little extra cash, after those few months she decided to give it up since she was getting tired and would often have to work later in the night too, and wasn't feeling it anymore. One day, about a month after Kath had stopped working as a cleaner, the cleaners were hard at work as the new It movie had just come out and the theaters from the night before were most likely trashed. One cleaner, Deb, was taking bags of trash out. There are exit doors that lead to the back of the building where the dumpsters are. As she walked out back one of the theaters, she said she noticed a figure standing out back. There's this short wooded area behind the theater, and there's also a small clearing that faces the back of the building. The figure was standing in this area, as far away that one might not be able to make out much detail. She didn't think much of it at first, as it's not uncommon for homeless people to hang out back since it's fairly secluded. Deb made her way to the dumpster and tossed the bags of trash in. Right as she finished and turned around to head back into the exit door, a man was standing just a few feet from her, completely decked out in a clown attire, holding a balloon and everything. To say the least, it scared her. Deb isn't a soft woman. She was definitely the kind that wouldn't be afraid to put you in your place. She started berating and cursing at the clown. But then, the clown replied, "I'm actually here to scare Kath, but I figured since I'm here, I'd go and scare anyone I see anyways." Freaked out, she marched back into the theater and didn't see him again. This is the freaky part though. Kath had no idea who that person could possibly be. She opened the day this happened, only about 3 hours after the incident, and was on edge and freaked out the entire shift after she had been told what happened. She refused to take the trash out during the shift, and even had 2 co-workers including myself walk her to her vehicle at the end of her shift. Whoever did this was targeting her and had somehow known her well enough to know that she worked as a cleaner this morning, but not be close enough to her to realize she had stopped working as a cleaner at least a month ago. To this day, Kath still has no idea who it was. A couple of theories have popped up, including her boyfriend, as though my coworkers and I have met him, and it's easy to say he's not the type to pull something like this. Also, they live with each other, and she would obviously realize if he wasn't home in the morning before her shift. I talked to everyone about this and get to the bottom of it. The cleaner, Deb, claims the man looked like a spitting image of a clown from It, and was horrifying. We do have cameras out back now, but they were recently installed and have rough quality, so either they haven't been put up at this point, or my general manager tried looking at the footage and couldn't make out what was happening that far away from the camera. About 2 years prior, my dad had purchased an old house with the intention of eventually tearing it down to build a new home. The home was built in 1916, and like most homes built in that era, it had a really unconventional floor plan. There was a central living room and kitchen like any normal home, but the 3 bedrooms were more akin to separate apartments. Each had its own separate outside entrance, a private bathroom, and a door that led to the common area living room and kitchen. Perhaps the place was originally intended to be a boarding house or something, I don't really know. The other thing was a little creepy about the house was that it's all wood. The ceiling, the walls, and floor were all brown, and nothing was ever painted or plastered. My dad was a really cool guy. While he was waiting for permits and financing, he let 3 of my friends live there for free in exchange for watching the place. They had a lot of parties, but my dad didn't care as long as none of the neighbors complained. I went to a few parties there myself when I was lucky enough to be home from college. Eventually, 2 of my friends moved out, leaving my one buddy there to watch the mostly empty house on his own. He was not the type of person to be afraid of living alone in a half-empty house, so he was fine with the situation. I was at home one afternoon when the phone rang. It was my buddy, and he sounds terrified. He tells me to call the police and to meet him out in the front of the driveway of the house, but under no conditions go in. I ask why, and he tells me that there's a crazy clown in the house. Apparently, he was sick with the flu in bed for the previous 2 days, and when he finally felt well enough to go into the kitchen to get something to eat, he runs face to face with a crazy woman dressed in a clown suit and makeup who starts screaming at him. It was then that he ran out of the house and called me in a panic from a nearby gas station. I call the police, then drive over to the house, which was about 2 miles away. I find my buddy on the sidewalk out front, and he's really shaken up. I ask him to describe what he saw, and he keeps saying that there's a crazy clown woman in the house. I ask for more specific details, and he describes her as a white clown suit with red makeup smeared all over her face. He's still a little sick, so he looked really bad, and honestly, he's freaking me out as well. There was no way that I'm gonna go into that house to investigate his story. After what seemed to be like an eternity, a cop shows up. My buddy tells him the exact story. The cop then goes into the house while we wait outside. About 5 minutes later, he escorts a crazy clown woman who looks exactly as my friend described her. She was wild, unkempt brown hair, and is wearing this weird baggy one-piece all-white body jumper suit that's kind of styled weirdly. What was really disturbing though is her face. She had a tube of lipstick which she crudely spread red all over her cheeks in a failed attempt, I suppose, to make them look frosty. Although we were both freaked out, the cop thought it was hilarious. The clown woman claimed it was her house and accused us of being on drugs and trespassing on her property. When the cop told her to get in the back of the car, she warned him that she had powerful friends in Tinseltown who would have him fired. When he comes back to talk to us, he tells us he can't arrest her for breaking and entering because the house was half abandoned. He said the best we could do was drive her a few blocks away and hope that she doesn't wander back. This, of course, freaks us even more. Fortunately though, when they run a background check on her, it turns out she's an outstanding warrant and would be going to jail instead. That was the last we saw of her. The really scary thing though was that this crazy woman was in the same house with my friend for at least a day when he was sick and semi-delirious in bed with a fever. She was probably harmless, but who knows what she would have done if she stumbled on him while he was asleep. His door was unlocked the entire time. Fortunately, she never did as far as we know. One thing she wrote on the cabinet in her lipstick was her name.